Welcome to the Ithihasa channel. The last time we spoke about the birth of Yudhishthira and Bhimasena, two wonderful children of Kunti, one from Dharma and one from Vayu. These two brothers started growing with utmost love between them, absolutely no jealousy. Bhima was much stronger and more powerful than Yudhishthira, very powerful child. Whereas Yudhishthira was a very learned boy who could understand the teachings of the rishis and his own father, and he would listen to them with apt attention, understanding everything that is being spoken. And seeing these two beautiful children, Pandu started feeling that he needs one more. And since he couldn't have tender relations with his wife, he asked her to go back again and call another deva, to summon another deva to sire a child. News quickly spread in Devaloka that Pandu wants another child, and Kunti might say yes. The excitement was great. Obviously, Kunti was an extremely gorgeous woman. In Pandu's words, Kunti of the beautiful smile, the Kunti of the swaying hips, and Kunti of the tapered legs. But not just that. A child born of Kunti with the Devas would be a child of destiny, an immortal child to be remembered for years and years, for as long as the sun and the moon would shine. And thereby giving immortality to the name of the father also. For today we remember Vayu. For Vayu Putra Hanuman. We know Hanuman, Anjaneya, and hence we remember Vayu. And so the Devas knew that their claim to immortality is going to be through this child of Kunti and Pandu. They were excited. And over time, the Devas started getting into Pandu's dreams and suggesting to him that they should be called. And the one who was most getting into the dreams was the King of Devaloka, Indra. Pandu had numerous dreams of Indra coming into his mind in the night, in the dreams, and telling him that he should be the one to be called. And the son born from Indra and Kunti will be the greatest archer, the greatest warrior that Bharatvarsha would ever see. A child who will take care of Dharma and fight against Adharma and bring glory to his parents. And so, the first creation of inception of a thought was done in Pandu's head by Indra himself. And then Pandu one day told Kunti that we should call Indra, the king of the Devas, the valiant king who never loses wars, who is regarded highly by all the gods and the Devas, who is respected across all the worlds. We should call him to sire the next child. And Kunti agreed willingly. She was quite excited about it. And then Kunti started walking back into the caves, through the hills, to the caves where she would call and summon Indra. And we can probably only imagine the other Devas just hoping and hoping, Kunti, say my name, say my name. I doubt it really occurred that way, but yeah, we could probably imagine it that way. And Kunti, as she walked towards the cave, it started raining, thunder, lightning, sounds, and the heavens opened up, for Indra was truly the god of the heavens. And she went into that cave and said the mantra, the immortal mantra from the beginning of time that Durvasa had taught her, and called Indra Sakra, king of the gods. And Indra came. He came in his Airavat, a beautiful. His history says it's a four-tusked elephant, probably like a mammoth. Probably also a spaceship which resembled a huge elephant with four sharp-pointed edges, which could be tusks. And Indra came in his Airavat, which nestled at the edge of the Shatashringa mountains, and he himself got down regally and walked with an air of smugness, like he was a chosen one. and it started raining and pouring, and Kunti got wet. But she maintained a certain calm about her, for she was excited and calm. But seeing this egoistic king come walking towards her, she wondered, what kind of a lover would he be? In an art which involves more giving than taking, would he be really that good? And Indra came, barely smiling at her, looking haughtily around, came, and they went into the cave together, and oh boy, she was wrong. He was probably one of the most passionate and ardent lovers among all her divine lovers she's ever had. A man who came across as smug and egoistic and arrogant was the epitome of selflessness that night. He was ambidextrous, which helped a lot, and a trait which he passed on to his son Arjuna. And the tempests roared that night, the thunder and lightning struck through the skies, and it rained all night. There was a sound all over Bharatvarsha that night, so that other sounds could be drowned out. And in the morning, when he tore himself from Kunti's arms, Kunti came out a happy woman, a woman who knew she was pregnant with the son of Indra, probably the greatest warrior of all of Bharatvarsha. And she walked back to their dwelling of Pandu and Madri and Kunti with a glow on her face. And Pandu immediately knew that she was with child. He was overjoyed. Those 9 months passed like a dream. Kunti was happy throughout those 9 months. She didn't have a bit of discomfort that comes with most pregnancies. She had wonderful dreams through those nights of 9 months. Madri and Pandu took care of her really well too. And at the end of it, that great son was finally born. And when that valiant son was born, there was a voice in the air which said, "Behold, this is the great Arjuna, son of Indra, Kunti and Pandu. He will be the greatest archer in all of Bharatvarsha. He will please the gods and get their weapons. He will fight on the side of Dharma with the Narayana himself, and he will quell all his enemies, and he will be one of the greatest." So in those days, obviously at the birth of a child, the rishis would come and look at the stars and nakshatras and plan the astrological chart for the child. And based on that astrological chart, which used to be fairly accurate, obviously astrology can never be accurate, but from the time of Kartikeya, son of Shiva, the astrology has been a marvelous science in India, fairly accurate. And through these astrological charts, it was deemed that the future of this child will be great. And the proudest were the parents, not just Pandu, Indra himself. Indra was brimming with pride at the birth of his son. So much so, he decided to come down to the Shatashringa mountains to hold his son in his arms. He didn't come alone. He brought the who's who of Devaloka down to the Shatashringa mountains. The number of people who came described in the Mahabharata, numerous. And I don't think I can remember most of their names, but I can probably remember a few of them. And Indra brought the Saptarishis down with him. The Saptarishis who got their training from the great Adi Yogi, Adi Guru Shiva himself. The Saptarishis, Vishwamitra, Vashishta, Gautama, Kashyapa, Bharadwaja, Jamagdagni, and the great Atri himself, who is said to have lit the entire world when the sun failed to shine. Along with the Saptarishis came the 8 Vasus, the Rudras, the Marutas, great Gandharvas like Chitraratha, great Apsaras came with them, great minstrels came with them, minstrels like Narada, Apsaras like Supriya, Urvashi, Ramba, Menaka, Tilottama, and the wonderful gods and the goddesses, Varuna, Vasu brothers, the Ashwini twins. They all came in all their glory with Indra to Have and behold that great son Arjuna who was born, the son who would then lead the forces of Dharma against Adharma, and victoriously that too. And that night in Shatashringa was a beauty to behold, a sight of all the devas, which most common rishis and the people around that area would never see in their lifetime, would probably never ever be seen ever in many, many lifetimes to come. They all came there to witness that birth. And when they went back, Pandu got another dream, a dream of another great birth happening far away in Mathura, down south from the Satashringa mountains. Far away in Mathura, a great child was born to Vasudeva and Devaki, the great Krishna, or the son of Vasudeva called Vasudeva. And he was supposed to be the Narayana, and Arjuna was supposed to be the Nara. The two would come together and take birth on this earth to rid this earth of evil and to bring back Dharma back to the earth. And as in the Gita they say, at every time in the future, whenever Adharma arises, whenever Adharma becomes too heavy a burden on this Bharatvarsha, the gods would themselves come down and be born again to rid the earth of this Adharma. And thus was Narayana born as Arjuna and Krishna respectively. Following the birth of Arjuna, Pandu was overjoyed. He couldn't help but see his three beautiful children grow with such great fervor, and he was so thrilled by it. And he knew that he had to have more. Greed got into him. And then he came to Kunti and told her, "You need to do it again." And Kunti refused. There was a feeling inside her that if she goes back again with the Deva, she would never want to return, and she knew that that could never happen. So she used every excuse that she could muster to say that she would not do it again. She would not summon another Deva because the memory of Indra who came previously was too much for her to bear. And she flatly refused. All along this time, that beautiful, chirpy second wife of Pandu, Madri, a huge change had come about her. She could see how Pandu would dote on those first three children, and also on Kunti. And he would almost never have time for Madri. There was a time when Madri was the center of his attraction, was the apple of his eye. And now that all had changed just by the three births of those beautiful Devaputras. And Madri saw that she was being neglected, she was being sidelined, and Pandu would not take much note of her. And a bitterness started seeping into her, which never existed in Madri. She was a free, living, chirpy young girl. And this bitterness started coming and it started growing inside her, and she couldn't control it. And when Kunti refused a child for Pandu, when Kunti was away one day, she called Pandu aside and said, "I have been a beautiful wife to you. I have been a dutiful wife to you. I have done everything by the book. And it hurts me that you give Kunti all this attention. Yes, she is the mother of three children, but I am unfortunate that I couldn't be the mother of any child, and it is sad that I cannot get that attention from my husband that I truly want and crave for. And all I want is a child. You don't know my loving husband Pandu. The things that Kunti tells and the way she looks at me and the way she behaves with me when you're not around, it hurts me. She reminds me every now and then that I was an unwanted second wife, that she would have been happier with you not having me around. And it hurts me so much. I never tell you these things because you're a great man and you shouldn't be burdened down by the problems of two women. But this is the truth. You do not know the hurt I'm going through every day with Kunti around." And this was the first time Pandu actually heard his wife complaining. He knew every man knows there is going to be discontent at home, and he very smartly ignored it. He very smartly sidestepped it, and as long as he was not involved, he didn't bother with it. He was an intelligent man. He knew how to manage two wives, and this was the best way to do it. But today, when it did come out into the open and when he was told, he felt sorry for Madri. And then he asked her, "What do you want me to do?" And Madri said, "Ask Kunti to teach me the mantra. I don't know if she will. And if I ask her, she will refuse. So you do it. Ask her to teach me the mantra. Let me learn the mantra and let me get the Deva Putra of my own. I will summon a Deva. You want a child from a Deva. I will summon a Deva. I will give you a son, my dear Pandu. Please ask Kunti to teach me the mantra. You have to, because if I do, she will flatly refuse, and that will be the end of the discussion." So Pandu knew that his dream of having another son was coming true, and he had to convince Kunti for it. So one day when Kunti was back at home, he broached the topic of another child, and as usual, Kunti said, "Absolutely not." And then Pandu said, "If you are not willing, why don't you teach the mantra to Madri? Let her call a Devta. Let us have a child from her. After all, she is childless." And immediately Kunti got alerted. You know, she's a very smart, calculating woman. Her first question was, "Is it your wish that I teach Madri the mantra, or was it her wish that I teach it to her? Because if she's not willing, why force her?" And then Pandu said, No, she was the one who brought it up. Then Kunti asked, "Under what circumstances did she bring it up?" "She's being loved by me and the children. The children love her like a mother. I love her like my little sister. There is nothing wrong between us. Why would she want a child? Isn't she happy?" And this was a way that Kunti tried to get out of Pandu what Madri would have told Pandu. Pandu was a smart man. He revealed nothing that Madri told him. Very intelligent thing. Keep your counsel to yourself. And Pandu never told anything to Kunti what Madri told him. He just said, "No, she's happy. Yes, definitely, you're a beautiful elder sister to her. But she would also like a child, and I would also like a child. And if you are willing, you are the first choice. But if you are not, I would like her to have this child. And it's written and it's been told by the rishis that I will have many children. And we have to fight this Dharma Yuddha. We know that in my brother's house, there is evil lurking and we have to fight it. And my children will have to fight it, not we, but my children will have to fight it. So let us have more children." And Kunti consented. But she knew that she couldn't trust Madri with the mantra. So she told Pandu, "I will take her away to the cave. I will say the mantra. And let her summon the Deva. And I will come back, but I will not teach Madri the mantra. Is that okay for you?" And Pandu said, "Yes, definitely, why not?" And so on a beautiful day, Madri, when it was the right time for her after her period, when she was at the most fertile, Kunti took Madri to the cave where she normally goes to. And standing at the mouth of the cave, Kunti recited the mantra and then told Madri, "Summon the Deva of your choice." And Kunti walked away right away. And Kunti summoned the Ashwini twins. They were technically divas or devas of a different caliber. They were the devas of medicine, of the Ayurvedas, of healing, and of the animals. They could take care of the cows, the animals, they could talk to the animals, and they were the gods of healing, of medicine, of Ayurveda, of the plants, of the forests, and of the animals. They were two extremely handsome brothers, twins, and Madri called them over. That night, a breeze and a slow hum gathered through the air all over the forest. The birds chirped through the night. The animals sang and the birds sang through the night. And there was a flurry of activity all night long, where all the wild creatures of the forest knew their master and their friend had come down to among them, and they rejoiced. And the next day when Madri came back glowing, Pandu knew that she would be with a child. And they excitedly asked her, Who is the Deva you called? And she said, "Let that be a secret with me. until the birth of the child. This was a very different Madri that was being seen. A Madri who was secretive, who was very careful in what she spoke. She normally wasn't like that. She would blurt out her mouth, she would talk what she wanted. She was just a little girl who was excited with everything in life. But this was a different Madri which came back that day, and she never revealed who the father of the child would be. Of course, at that time, they just thought it was one Deva. And at the end of 9 months, Madri gave back to two beautiful twins. And then she revealed, actually, she didn't reveal it. It was the voice from heaven, that astrological reading that revealed that here born are the two children of Madri and the Ashwini twins. They shall be called Nakula and Sahadeva. The elder one will be Nakula and the younger one will be Sahadeva. They will be great warriors themselves. They will be great people and extremely handsome and beautiful to look at. They will be extremely well versed with the Vedas and all kinds of knowledge. They will be extremely brilliant growing up, and they will be the greatest help to the other three elder brothers that they could ever have hoped for. And it was then that Madri realized that Kunti realized that Madri had probably deceived her. By calling the Ashwini twins, she had summoned two devas at once. When the mantra was for one, she summoned two and got two children in a single attempt at the mantra, thus bringing the equation of children closer to Kunti's. Kunti knew that Pandu's love was based on the children. More the children you had, more was the love he gave you. And Madri had closed that gap in one single mantra, and Kunti hated her for it. She repented having given Madri the mantra, but Madri was absolutely thrilled. She brought up those two children with all the love she could muster, but a change had come over Madri. While before these children came, she would play with Yudhishthira, Bhima and Arjuna. She now stopped playing with them. She completely neglected them. She absolutely stopped even looking at those other three children, and her whole concentration and mind was only on these two children, Nakula and Sahadeva. While through the time, Kunti treated all five children equally. Kunti treated all the five children like her very own. She made no distinction at all between those five children, but Madri would only love those two children of hers, Nakula and Sahadeva. And that partiality was stark. And surprisingly, those two children loved Kunti more than they loved their own biological mother, Madri. Probably when the child sees selflessness in love, the child sees that as the purest form of love and can reciprocate. Whereas a love that is born out of selfishness can be seen as love that's not absolutely pure by a young child who can see the beauty of love clearly. And so these five children grew up in the forest. The forest was their greatest teacher. The forest is always a good teacher. Being close to nature, you learn to interact with animals, you learn to forage for food in the forest, you learn to hunt for food, you learn to take care of the animals when they're injured, you learn to hunt only how much is needed for your basic requirement, not a morsel more. You know the value of food. You learn to listen to the birds and learn how they speak to each other. You learn to listen with animals. And this was a time when we had pastoral civilizations which depended on animals. Warriors depended on animals for their war, elephants, horses, and various other animals. So having a close contact with these animals was very important. They also learned to fight against intruders, fight against animals, swim in the waters, in the torrid currents of the rivers flowing by, and gained in strength every day. They had rishis from all over Bharatvarsha who would come to the Himalayas for penance and for meditation, And they would talk to these rishis and learn innumerable things from them. And they had their father all the time. Pandu was not a father who had a 9 to 5 job, who would leave at 9 in the morning, come at 5 in the evening, or in today's time, leave at 10 in the morning and come at 11 or 12 at night. He was a father who stayed at home, a valiant warrior who conquered kingdom after kingdom and increased the size of Bharatvarsha, the Hastinapura kingdom all across Bharatvarsha. Such was his greatness in war. What greater than this? Could they dream of a greater teacher than this? No. They had their father as the greatest teacher who taught them the art of war. Over the years of his stay in Satasringa with all his ascetic abilities, he and his penance, he developed very serious ascetic abilities, and he was able to teach all this to his children. And they learned from him, they laughed with him, they stayed with him, they sang with him, and they danced with him. Singing and dancing was an important part of a warrior's life. When you think of Indian classical dance like Bharatanatyam or Kuchipudi or one of these beautiful, authentic Indian dances, ancient Indian dances, you normally think of a woman dancing. And a man who would dance would be considered effeminate or, not very manly. But dance was considered one of the greatest things that a great warrior could learn. The greatest dancer of all times was one of the greatest men of all times. Our own UP boy would praise that greatest dancer, Shiva himself. Ravana wrote the Shiva Tandav Stotram in praise of the great dancer Shiva, calling him Nilimpanayakam, the god of the lords, the god of the entire universe. And in his words, in the Shiva Tandav Stotram, Dimid 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 Dvanan Mridangatunga Mandalam Dvanikrama Pravartita Prachanda Tandava Shiva. He spoke about the Shiva Tandava, the great dance of Shiva, where he would smash his legs on the rocks of the Himalayas, creating the sound Dimid Dimid Dimid, like a mridangam which was right in the top of the Himalayas, spreading its sound all the way south into the plains of Bharatvarsha. Such was the great dancer that Shiva was. If such a great man could be a great dancer, what shame in dancing? Dancing was essential to develop coordination, to develop reflexes, to develop ability to move around quickly, to be able to escape oncoming arrows, to be able to move your body flexibly, to be able to escape from difficult situations in war. And singing just as important because you had to learn to control your breath, to control your voice, to be able to modulate your voice, to talk to the general public, to rev up the public, to talk to your soldiers when they are fighting, and to scream out orders in the middle of the entire war, and to control your breath to be able to fight. So singing and dancing were essential parts of training in those days. And Pandu taught them well. And so these boys spent many years in the forest with their father. Sometime when they were around 11, 12, the great sage Kashyapa came there. Kashyapa was the rishi for Vasudeva and Krishna. Kashyapa was sent by Vasudeva to meet the Pandavas. The 5 sons of Pandu were called Pandavas. So Kashyapa was sent by Vasudeva to meet the Pandavas to give them the news about Krishna. And Kashyapa came down to Satasringa and met the Pandavas, by 5 Pandava children, and Pandu and Madri and Kunti, and told them stories about the birth of the great Krishna and Balarama, how he was born to the captive Vasudeva and Devaki, and how the evil Kansa, Devaki's brother, would torture and torment them, and yet in spite of all of this, Krishna was born. And he told them stories of this cousin of theirs. Krishna was a cousin of the Pandavas because Kunti, Pritha, was Vasudeva's sister. So Krishna's father and the Pandavas' mother Kunti were brother and sister. and Kashyapa told them these stories. He brought them gifts from Vasudeva, gifts which he distributed among these children. And he also did their Upanayana, the introduction of the Vedas, official introduction of the Vedas with the Gayatri Mantra to these Pandava boys. And after some time, he went back. Around that time came another great warrior called Sukha. He was also a great rishi. He was not the Sukha who was the son of Vedavyasa or the son of Krishna Dvaipayana. This was a different Sukha. And this Sukha was an extremely good warrior too. And he came there to the Shatashringa mountains, to the place, to the meadows where these Pandava children were growing, almost like fate willed him to come there and forced him to come there. And when he came there, he formally started the initial training of these 5 Pandava children in warfare. Yudhishthira, Bhimasena, Arjuna, Nakula and Sahadeva. Under his tutelage and training, these Pandava children learnt the art of warfare and started showing the first glimpses of the warriors that they would finally be. Yudhishthira excelled in the javelin or the spear. Bhimasena with the mace. Huge and powerful, Bhimasena could wield a heavy mace with ease and with great dexterity. Arjuna excelled as an archer of great excellence, who could shoot with both hands, well, like his father, who too was ambidextrous and a great warrior himself, Indra Sakra himself. The twins Nakula and Sahadeva, they were also excellent warriors. They excelled in all the arts of war. They were great with the javelin, they were great with the sword, they were great with the mace, and they were great with the bow and arrow too. Of course, in each of these various weapons, they were not as good as their brothers, but they were extremely good in the art of war. And Sukha taught them everything he knew. At the end of it, he went to Pandu and told him, I don't know why I was called here, but I was called here for destiny. Destiny brought me here, fate brought me here to teach everything that I could to these children. Your third son, Arjuna, is an archer par excellence. He is an extremely fast learner, and I have taught him everything that I know. The knowledge that he has of archery cannot be learnt in one generation. It has to be learnt over generations and generations and perfected in this particular one. And today I feel that my work is complete, and I can now go back to the hills and give my body away. My life is complete. And so saying, Sukha walked away into the northern Himalayas and finally attained moksha, leaving behind the 5 Pandava children who were extremely adept in the art of war. And with this, we complete this episode. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Nagendraya Namaha, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Amme Narayana, Om Anjaneyaya Namaha. Om Namah Guruve Namaha.